A man discovers a pair of glasses in a church that expose the true identities of aliens secretly controlling humanity. Today, we'll recap the 1988 movie They Live. George Nada, an unemployed drifter from Colorado, roams across America in search of a better life. His journey brings him to Los Angeles, a city of towering skyscrapers and endless opportunities. Hoping to find work, he visits a job center, where many others are also seeking employment. During an interview, George explains how businesses in his hometown shut down, leaving countless people jobless. However, the job center worker, showing little sympathy, informs him that he lacks sufficient experience. Disheartened, George forces a smile and leaves. As he aimlessly wanders the city streets, he stops to listen to a passionate preacher addressing a small crowd. The preacher warns that demons have infiltrated the ruling class and manipulate ordinary people through them. He urges his listeners to wake up and break free from this hidden control. Noticing a police car nearby, Nada chooses to move along. On his way, he sees a man staring blankly at a TV screen behind a store window, seemingly hypnotized by a meaningless advertisement. George, however, pays little attention and continues walking. Eventually, he stumbles upon a temporary shelter for the homeless, where he decides to spend the night. In a nearby house, a woman is entranced by a TV show featuring a self-obsessed celebrity who believes they will never age. Exhausted, George leans back in his chair with a heavy sigh, lost in thought. The next day, he visits a construction site, hoping to get a job as a laborer. Initially, the foreman refuses, stating that only union workers are hired. However, George persuades him, and after negotiating wages, he secures the job. Although he has found work, he won't be paid for a few days, leaving him without a place to stay. Noticing his frustration, a worker named Frank offers to take him to a camp where he can find food and a warm shower. George is initially wary of his new acquaintance but ultimately follows him. As they walk, they engage in conversation and bond. At the camp, Frank introduces George to a welcoming community of people from around the world who came to Los Angeles in search of prosperity. The residents support each other, and even the children feel at home there. A local man named Gilbert immediately assigns George a task to help improve the camp. When lunchtime arrives, George receives a generous portion of food. During their meal, Frank shares his story. Like George, he left his hometown in search of work to provide for his family, who remain in Detroit. He resents the wealthy elite for shutting down factories and putting thousands out of work. Frustrated and at his breaking point, Frank is prepared to take drastic action if another plant closes. He believes survival is a battle for the lower classes and warns George that he won't hesitate to compete for opportunities. Unlike Frank, George remains hopeful. He is determined to work hard and rebuild his life from scratch. That evening, Nada walks around the camp and notices a group of locals watching a TV commercial about artificial nails with great interest. Suddenly, the signal cuts out, and a tense-looking man appears on the screen. He warns that they are all living in an artificially controlled world. According to him, a group of scientists discovered that unknown entities are transmitting a special signal to Earth, placing people in a trance and stripping them of critical thinking. As a result, poverty is increasing, and racial injustice is worsening. These aliens have brainwashed humanity into apathy, making them care only about their own self-interest. However, the camp residents dismiss the strange man's warning. Instead of paying attention, they complain about headaches and quickly switch the channel. Meanwhile, Nada notices a blind priest nearby, repeating the broadcast word for word. Suddenly, Gilbert rushes over to the priest, and though George cannot hear their conversation, he senses tension between them. Gilbert then hurriedly escorts the old man toward the church on the camp's premises. Watching them leave, George begins to suspect they are hiding something. The next morning, Nada sees Gilbert at the camp entrance and decides to ask about his late-night visit to the church. Gilbert explains that the church operates a communal kitchen for the homeless, and he stayed overnight to help clean up. He also mentions that he sings in the church choir and is heading there now for a rehearsal. Just then, the same broadcast from the previous night reappears on TV. The mysterious man once again urges people to stop the transmission of the mind-controlling signal. Once more, the broadcast triggers severe headaches among the residents, who only feel relieved when the TV switches back to a baseball game. Gilbert, visibly anxious, rushes to the church again, and this time, Nada decides to follow him. As he approaches, he hears choir singing inside, which reassures him that his presence won't seem suspicious. Upon entering, he stumbles upon a small chemical laboratory and a striking message on the wall: "They live, we sleep." Nearby, a tape recorder plays the choir singing on a loop, masking the noise of a secret meeting happening behind the wall. In the next room, Gilbert, the man from the broadcast, and several others are gathered, attempting to hack the television signal to extend their messages' airtime and reach more viewers. Their goal is to recruit as many people as possible to spread awareness about the hidden truth. As George quietly backs away, He accidentally stumbles upon a hidden storage area filled with boxes. Choosing to leave this mystery for later, he carefully closes the vault and turns to leave only to run into the blind priest. The priest reaches out, feeling George's face and hands, then lets him go. Immediately recognizing him as a laborer, the priest launches into a speech about revolution, speaking with conviction and urgency. Disturbed, George abruptly flees the church, but the preacher calls after him, insisting that he will return. As Nada steps outside, a police helicopter suddenly appears, circling above the church, making the secret meeting attendees uneasy. After a tense moment, the helicopter flies away. Curious, George borrows binoculars from a local teenager and watches as Gilbert and his associates hurriedly remove boxes from the church and load them into a car. Just as he is about to make sense of the situation, his surveillance is interrupted. Frank has found him. Nada immediately tells Frank about what he saw inside the church, but Frank wants no part in it. He warns Nada not to get involved, fearing trouble. Meanwhile, the car carrying the mysterious boxes pulls away from the church. George keeps a close watch on the church through his binoculars for the rest of the day, but nothing else happens. As night falls, however, the camp and the church are suddenly surrounded by police. The residents, unsure of what they've done wrong, silently observe the unfolding events. Then, without warning, bulldozers move in, demolishing the makeshift tents and trailers. Chaos erupts as people flee in panic. George watches in horror as law enforcement officers brutally destroy the lives of innocent people. The police capture both the blind priest and the preacher from the television broadcast. They try to resist, but the officers beat them mercilessly until they stop moving. The same fate awaits anyone who fails to escape in time. Though George is powerless to save those already caught, he manages to rescue a terrified teenager hiding in a corner. Barely evading the police, George and the teenager climb to the top floor of a crumbling church. Wandering through the corridors, they eventually find a hidden room where the remaining survivors have taken shelter. The group, still in shock, spends the entire night in hiding, unsure why they were targeted. At dawn, they cautiously emerge to survey the aftermath of the raid. The camp has been completely destroyed, resembling the aftermath of a violent storm. Amidst the wreckage, they find a lone television still standing, bizarrely intact. It plays cheerful commercials, as if nothing had happened. Determined to uncover the truth, George returns to the church to investigate the secret vault. The inscription on the wall "They live, we sleep" has been covered up, likely during the police raid. Searching the remains of the pantry, he finds a single surviving box, identical to the ones Gilbert had taken away the night before. Before he can examine its contents, a patrol car drives past, forcing him to hide. Once he finds a safe place, he finally opens the box only to discover it is filled with dozens of sunglasses. Disappointed and confused, he stashes the box in a trash can, taking just one pair with him. As he wanders through the city, George absent-mindedly puts on the glasses and suddenly, everything changes. The world shifts into stark black and white. What was once familiar now appears disturbingly different. Every billboard, sign, and newspaper headline is stripped of its usual imagery, replaced with blunt commands: obey, marry, breed, consume, buy, don't think, watch TV. Magazines are nothing but collections of manipulative slogans urging submission. Even more unsettling, some people who had seemed perfectly normal moments ago now reveal their true monstrous appearances. He takes the glasses off and puts them back on multiple times, unable to believe what he's seeing. The person standing in front of him is indeed a grotesque alien-like creature. The being eyes George suspiciously but does nothing. Looking down at the money in his hands, George sees another chilling revelation. Printed across every banknote is the phrase, "This is your God." He also notices strange transmitters installed at every traffic light. They continuously broadcast a hypnotic command: sleep. As he observes the city further, George realizes that not everyone is the same. Ordinary humans seem to interact naturally with the grotesque creatures, unaware of their true nature. It quickly becomes clear the monsters are the ones thriving in society. Inside a supermarket, George watches a politician delivering a speech on TV. Through the glasses, he sees the truth: the politician is another alien in disguise. Overwhelmed by the absurdity of it all, he starts laughing hysterically. His behavior draws attention. A woman in the store who appears monstrous through the glasses bumps into him. Unable to hold back, he insults her. Frantically, he tries to warn the others that she is not human, but his outburst only exposes him. The woman discreetly speaks into a walkie-talkie embedded in her wristwatch, reporting him to the others. She provides a description of his appearance, alerting her fellow creatures. Within moments, the aliens mobilize against him. Realizing he's in danger, George bolts out of the store and onto the street. More alien figures turn their eerie gazes toward him, but he's too panicked to notice. He shouts insults at another disguised creature, but before he can flee, he is seized by the police, who are not human either. Dragged into custody, George is interrogated. The fake officers demand to know where he got the glasses. He refuses to answer. The guards threaten George, trying to convince him to join them. However, he refuses to give in. Instead, he fights back, overpowering the officers, stealing their weapons, and eliminating them. As police cars flood the area, George, now armed, takes cover inside a nearby bank. There, he makes a chilling discovery: half of the visitors are aliens disguised as humans. Fueled by adrenaline, he opens fire on them, exposing their monstrous forms. One of the aliens manages to call for backup before mysteriously vanishing before George can shoot. Realizing he's outnumbered, George flees the bank. As he dashes through the streets, he spots a drone tracking him. Without hesitation, he shoots it down and makes his way to a closed parking lot, where he encounters a woman named Holly. Ensuring she is human, he takes her hostage and forces her to drive him to her house, his only chance to escape as more alien enforcers rush toward the bank. At Holly's house, George, exhausted, collapses onto the floor. He apologizes for his actions, explaining that the world is under the control of evil creatures manipulating humanity. He urges her to put on the sunglasses and see the truth for herself, but Holly refuses, dismissing his claims as delusional. As he starts to relax, Holly quietly attempts to slip past him, but George, still on edge, watches her every move. After a moment of tension, he calms down and asks what she does for a living. Holly reveals that she works as an assistant director at a television station. A realization strikes George: the aliens use television signals to control people's minds. Determined to break their broadcast, he shares his theory with Holly. However, the moment his guard is down, she smashes a bottle over his head and pushes him out of the window. George crashes onto the pavement from the second floor but miraculously survives. However, his sunglasses are lost. Meanwhile, Holly contacts the police and reports him. Now hunted once again, George flees and hides under a bridge, evading the authorities. As night falls, he makes his way to another part of town, forced to sleep on the streets. The next day, George seeks out Frank at a construction site, desperate for help. However, Frank is horrified by what George has done. The entire city sees him as a mass murderer after his shooting rampage. George insists that those he shot were not humans but disguised aliens, but Frank refuses to listen and tells him to leave. Determined, George returns to the trash can where he hid the box of sunglasses, only to find it empty. Spotting a garbage truck nearby, he climbs into the back and frantically sifts through the trash, eventually recovering a few surviving pairs. Coincidentally, Frank witnesses George rummaging through the garbage. Feeling pity, he hands George his salary, telling him he can't be part of this insanity. But George refuses to let him walk away. He pleads with Frank to put on the glasses, but Frank, convinced his friend has lost his mind, refuses. Frustrated by his disbelief, George resorts to force. A brutal fistfight erupts between the two, each refusing to back down. Eventually, George overpowers Frank and shoves the sunglasses onto his face. Frank stares in horror as the hidden world reveals itself: ghoulish alien faces, subliminal messages, and the eerie truth behind society's elite. Now convinced, Frank joins George, and the two rent a room at a nearby motel to regroup. As they strategize their next move, Frank suggests that there must be others who have also uncovered the truth. They need to find them. As they talk, George shares a painful childhood memory: growing up in extreme poverty, suffering under an abusive father. He recalls how deep social inequality fueled resentment among ordinary people, a divide the aliens have exploited for years to maintain their power. Now, driven by vengeance for his broken life, George is determined to fight back. The next morning, George and Frank meet Gilbert at the motel, who is also wearing the special sunglasses. He invites them to a secret meeting that evening with like-minded individuals who have also seen the truth. At the meeting, they encounter others from all walks of life, people who have uncovered the alien conspiracy. The group exchanges their sunglasses for advanced contact lenses that provide a clearer and safer vision of reality. Gilbert explains in detail who these creatures are. The aliens have infiltrated Earth, recruiting ordinary humans with promises of wealth and power. To them, Earth is just a temporary business venture, a resource hub for the creation of their third world. Global catastrophes and climate change? All they're doing. Once Earth is drained, they plan to move on and enslave new planets. A resistance member shows Frank an alien watch, explaining that it allows the invaders to communicate and teleport. However, the group has yet to crack its secret code. Gilbert reminds everyone that they don't have enough manpower for an all-out attack. However, the resistance is eager to act. Instead of a direct assault, Gilbert suggests they first locate the source of the alien signal and disrupt it, freeing humanity from its trance. Just then, Holly arrives. She nervously plays with George's sunglasses and apologizes for what she did. Before they can talk further, the police storm the meeting and open fire. Chaos erupts. Most of the resistance members are gunned down in the attack, but George, Frank, and Holly manage to escape unscathed. Armed and determined, they fight back, taking cover in a dark alley. George insists on going back for Holly, but Frank stops him. It's too dangerous. Instead, he fiddles with the alien watch, hoping to tap into their communication. Instead, he accidentally activates a portal. As the police close in, they have no choice but to jump through. The portal leads them to an underground alien base. Strange symbols cover the walls. Moving cautiously, they stumble upon an alien checkpoint. Disguised as military personnel, the aliens report over the radio that the operation to eliminate the rebels was a success. Satisfied, they leave to celebrate. Following the sound of voices, George and Frank reach a grand banquet hall, where an elite human leader gives a speech praising the alien alliance. He proudly announces that Earth will soon be under complete alien control, benefiting the human elite. He then shares their progress statistics, which are met with thunderous applause. A familiar face approaches them, one of the former camp residents who has joined the invaders. Mistaking George and Frank for new recruits, he is surprised they are still dressed like the poor. Eager to show off his new allegiance, he gives them a tour of the facility. At an alien-controlled airport, George and Frank witness disguised aliens preparing for interplanetary travel. Then, they reach the backstage of a massive television studio, the heart of the alien operation. A satellite dish transmits signals that keep humanity under hypnosis. Using flattery, George tricks their guide into taking them inside the studio. However, the guards refuse to let them in without a pass. Left with no choice, George and Frank open fire. Their old acquaintance tries to stop them, urging them to surrender. He explains that the aliens have already won, they control every aspect of life. He offers them a chance to join the victors and enjoy the rewards of obedience. But George and Frank refuse to betray humanity. A soldier bursts in, giving the traitor a chance to teleport away. Undeterred, the friends fight their way into the main office, where human recruits work for the aliens. George interrogates them, searching for Holly, but no one knows where she is. However, he learns that the mind-controlling satellite signal is broadcast from the roof. As they rush upstairs, they finally find Holly alive and seemingly on their side. Together, they fight their way to the rooftop. But just as victory seems near, Holly turns on them. Without hesitation, she shoots Frank in the head, revealing herself as a traitor. Before George can react, she orders him to surrender, pointing her gun at him. But George refuses. In a final act of defiance, he shoots Holly first, then turns his weapon on the satellite dish, destroying it. Helicopters open fire, riddling George with bullets. As he falls, he manages one last act of rebellion, raising his middle finger at the aliens. With the signal broken, humanity finally wakes up. The horrifying truth is exposed: aliens have been living among them, manipulating them through media, government, and society itself. Thanks to one lone drifter from Colorado, the world is no longer blind. So, what did you think of this movie? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you next time.